Hello, this is Beyond the Headlines, and I'm Jane Gogodas. In this edition, as Malawi aspires to be the greenest economy in Africa, we look at efforts by a Blantyre man to clean up Mudi River.
And this waste here, as you can see, the water is dead here because there is no movement of water going through.
One journalist dares herbalists, calls for the industry to be regulated.
I am against the use of herbs where the herbalists or the herbs that are given to the people, they are harming the patients and they are basically a danger to people's lives.
Also in this edition, a regional psychosocial group calls for investment in mental health. Thanks for joining us, and once again, a warm welcome. Now, Mudi is one of the rivers in the country which is environmentally under siege. The river is a dumping site for waste and industrial effluents, so much that during the summer, the river stinks. There have been several cleanup exercises, but with little success. The river still remains choked up with all sorts of waste. But one Blantyre man, Manota Mpande, is determined to get dirty and clean the river which meanders its way through Blantyre CBD. McDonald Chiwayula with the story in this report by Bernard Kankono.
The Blantyre city is known for its industrial and commercial activities. The city has over 800,000 people. Blantyre's growing population also means the volume of waste the city produces is high. Disposing of waste is an issue as people have resorted to nearby rivers as dumping sites, leading to contamination of river water. Mudi River has not been spared. Down the stream where the Mudi River flows, there are residents. These people depend on water from the river for domestic use. Emmanuel Muleremba is a resident of Manase area in Blantyre. Muleremba explains how his life has been affected by the pollution happening in the Mudi River.
Our lives are in danger because of the pollution happening in Mudi River. We depend on this water for irrigation, brick making and washing our clothes. Others even bath using this water. There are skin infections reported by those that use water from this river. If this pollution is stopped, our lives will be healthier as a decade ago.
In a bid to promote cleanliness in the city, Manota Mpande is removing waste in Mudi River.
About 2 years ago, I saw the state of this. It's actually, I think in the last 12 days, a lot has been moved. It was literally right up to there was where all the waste was. Now, this waste has probably been accumulating over a space of 10 years, if not more than 10 years. So here's where we've started our projects. Slowly by slowly, we're removing this waste. And obviously, our goal is to totally get rid of that waste, of this waste, and this waste here. As you can see, the water is dead here because there is no movement of water going through. So one of our key aims as well on the Mudi is to be able to open up the Mudi River in spaces where it seems to have been stifled up with the waste. This river, as I said, I think at the beginning, has been choked. It's been choked a lot by a lot of the waste us human beings in Blantyre throw into this river, or a lot of the waste that makes it into this river.
Mpande says he plans to extend the cleanup from the general human waste to removing the toxins in the river.
I think the toxicity in the river is mainly from industrial waste, and that is something that we can only approach with Blantyre City Assembly. We don't have the mandate to look at the toxicity of the river apart from testing it. We will be testing 9 points on the Moody River as well, so that we ourselves also start to understand how toxic the river is. Currently, the river is a dead river because from a certain point of the Moody to a certain point, there is literally nothing that is living in the river.
Malawi's Environmental Act of 2017 prescribes on the environmental quality standards of water sources. On the other side, the Eco-Friendly Act prohibits the dumping of toxic substances and other influents in water bodies. Emmanuel Chirwa advocates for better environmental practices. He commends Mpande's action, saying this is one way to bring back aquatic life to most polluted rivers.
Yeah, it is really important to manage waste which everybody is producing, not necessarily saying Blantyre alone, because as I indicated earlier on, waste has health and environmental hazards. For example, we go to Ndilande, or when you go along the Moody, you realize that there's a lot of waste there and the water is contaminated. Suppose someone takes that water and uses it for household use, what would be the result? Obviously, the health of that person is compromised. And at the same time, the environment also is also suffering a lot, because there are aquatic organisms in the river which are suffering. And there are places whereby the water is so acidic that not even fish can survive. So that is also a very big challenge. So managing waste, ensuring that everybody is playing a role in disposing of waste, in practicing sustainable waste management systems and practices is so beneficial, because one, the health of residents in Blantyre will improve, and at the same time, the status of the environment itself will also be improved. As I said, that waste also contribute to climate change. If we are managing waste sustainably, which means we are also controlling climate change at the same time.
The initiative, which is in its 19th day, has collected over 150 bags of waste from the river. The collected wastes are expected to be recycled into eco bricks and other items. The campaign is expected to run for 70 days. Moody River is one of the few rivers in the country that barely has living organisms because of pollution.
Now, Africa, Malawi inclusive, is endowed with so many animal and plant species which are used for medicinal value, among other things. For time immemorial, Africa has turned to herbs for what is known as traditional healing. And with rising cases of illnesses such as diabetes, hypertension, stroke, kidney disease, cancer, and other illnesses, herbs have turned to be one major prescription for many with such conditions. And if the classified ads in newspapers and TVs is anything to go by, then we can safely say that there is a remarkable increase in herbal usage for healing purposes. However, the herbal industry is yet to be fully regulated, prompting debate on the safety of herbs. Writing in The Nation on Sunday, journalist Selina Kainja claims that herbalists are, in quotes, killing people. We engaged her on the article and began by asking her to share her observations on the issue.
What I've observed so far in terms of herbal usage in Malawi, basically, there are some herbalists who actually have what they're calling clinics, where they do admissions of patients, and then they'll treat the patients at their clinics in courts. They will be giving them, prescriptions. You drink this, you do that. But usually, you find that the people that go to those clinics sometimes are very ill, critically ill people. And at the end of the day, when such people, they would, let's say, spend 2 weeks at that clinic and are not healed, these herbalists will just send these patients to to a healthy facility, proper government healthy facility. And some of the people have actually died in those clinics, in the herbalist clinics.
You're describing the use of herbal medication as a silent killer on the loose. Would you explain what you mean by these sentiments?
What I've observed from my own experience, right, is that in terms of diagnosis, most herbalists wouldn't tell you exactly what you're suffering from. It's you, the patient, telling them, okay, I have cancer, I have HIV. Like I said, these guys, I know there are some who are well-trained. They know their medication, they know what they're mixing to give people, but at the end of the day, it's just not possible for them to critically look at what someone is suffering from and prescribe the right dosage for that kind of illness. So that's so far what I've observed. And actually there are others who would take these herbs and vomit until they choke on their own vomit and die. That's from my personal experience. And it's just me wondering, say, if this is a herb that is supposed to cure, why is it killing people?
One would think that you're against the use of herbal medication. Are you?
Let me make it very clear that I'm not like totally against the use of herbs. No. I am against the use of herbs where the herbalist or the herbs that are given to the people, they are harming the patients and they are basically a danger to people's lives. I'm against that sort of medication from these herbalists. I'm not against the use of herbs. There are people who have been healed by some of these herbs, and I'm a total believer in traditional medication. It heals. What I'm totally against is, like I said, where a herbalist now operates like sort of full-fledged clinic where they are doing admissions, they're prescribing drugs to people in that hospital, they're giving them all sorts of herbs. Sometimes you find them, they're giving them, you know, the usual basic things, basically mixing up these all sorts of herbs to give them the people, which end up harming people. And the prescription that they give, because like I said, you find that in this prescription, it could be too much or too less, okay? Either way, it's not good for the patient.
You're also claiming in the article that these herbalists dupe their clients and that they put the lives of those clients in danger. Again, if you would explain yourself on this.
I feel like some of these herbalists dupe their patients because I'm so certain some of them, they know they are not going to, the prescription that they're giving to the patient is not going to cure them. They collect money from them, okay? And they tell them after so many days you'll be okay. And some of them people have, okay, whatever happens, some get healed, some don't. But the majority are duped.
There are so many unregulated players on the herbal market. I'd like to find out from you, in your opinion, what should be done to address this issue?
I guess in my layman's opinion, I would say what really needs to be done is for government to come in and regulate the use of herbs. I know they are registered, the herbalists, but has government so far done enough to keep these people in check? I feel like there are times that government has just let herbalists loose to do whatever they want to do. They flight adverts in the media, they put all sorts of things, and they're just let scot-free without even being questioned and asked, okay? So if there could be regulation, that would work.
Nation on Sunday journalist Selina Kainja. Now, we all may have worn a uniform at one point or the other. It may have been at school, church, at work, and of course, several other places. It is not strange, therefore, to see school-going children wearing uniforms. Nurses, traditional leaders, and lawyers, to mention a few, are some of the professions that adorn a certain type of uniform too. Well, wearing of uniforms is common and an age-long tradition in our societies. But if truth be told, the uniform-wearing culture is alien to Africa and was introduced by the colonial masters. Why then are we still stuck with this culture decades after many African countries attained independence? The good news, though, is that some countries are emancipating themselves from this norm and are introducing uniforms that depict their African culture. However, we look forward to the day Malawi will follow suit. Our own Peter Makawa engaged Dennis Mwiwa, a historian with Mzuzu University, who gives us an insight on uniform wearing.
I can't really say there is some kind of specified period in which we can benchmark to say this is the period that uniforms began to be used, because we are trying to look at it from the perspective of dressing as it has been taking place, especially if you look from the pre-colonial period and then we come to the colonial period in Malawi. We actually noticed that there were a number of groups that were coming into the country, especially in terms of the Europeans. We talk of the missionaries, we talk about the traders, and then you also had the administrators. Now, you actually notice that most of these were in touch with different groups of Malawians. For example, if you look at the missionaries, their target was to convert most Africans towards Christianity. Now, they came up with their forms of dressing. As a matter of conversion, they could actually give certain clothes to Africans. That was one way of converting the Africans in order to attack them to their religion. But at the same time, you notice that these missionaries were against the traditional dressing of the Africans. Now they wanted them to be putting on the kind of dressing that they actually wished. And through that, they also used schools as one way of evangelizing. And in those particular schools, you actually notice that they came up with their own types of clothing that they actually desired.
Years after we were colonized, now we are independent, but why are we so stuck to the colonial type of uniforms that we are wearing in different disciplines?
Most of our leaders, especially the post-independence era, were actually those that had been greatly influenced by the colonial enterprise. And most of these had actually been trained in the West. We can't just talk about the political leaders, we also talk about the religious leaders. Most of them had their education influenced by the West. So whatsoever they brought into the new system, which we called the reformed system in the independence era, was still guided by the colonial mentality. So it's still a colonial lyric that I would say we brought it from there, and then our leaders picked it forward, and we have moved with that kind of tradition, and we are failing to actually get out of that mentality up to this particular age.
Then there is the issue to do with the lawyers' dressing. This was adopted in the early 1600s from the UK, but the people in the UK, the lawyers themselves, have moved on. And now we see in Africa, especially Malawi, we are still stuck to that type of dressing by our lawyers. Why is that the case?
I think because of the British influence into Africa, most of this style was also placed in their colonies. And then as the independent states, we also adopted the same. In fact, it has been a bond of contention even amongst the lawyers fraternity themselves. I think it has been an issue that has been debated on, is still being debated on. You look at Kenya, I think this issue has been raised on and on. Some of the issues that people try to consider are issues to do with maybe with climate change, with the weather. It's quite hot, but we're still stuck to that kind of traditional way. I think it also goes with the pride that our lawyers or judiciary have, because it isolates them from other professions. So maybe they don't want to move away from that kind of mentality because of the attachment, strong attachment that they have to within their profession. In as much as it's a unique profession, but we can also have a unique profession by having their own styles of uniforms as well.
Now, we are seeing some few countries are moving on. They're changing the fabric, the style of their uniforms. For example, we can talk about Ghana. Ghana, now they're using local fabric, to do their uniform. And that has created wealth for the country, and of course we see that a lot of people have managed to get jobs locally because of that arrangement. What lessons can Malawi draw from that?
Actually, I was very impressed when I saw it. It was even passing through social media, and I even saw some pictures of school children going into this new regalia of the uniforms, and that is actually patterned on the African dressing. It's a big congratulations to the Ghanaians, and obviously it's a big lesson that the country can also draw.
Dennis Mwiba, a historian with Mzuzu University. Now, the mental state of many across the world has been strained by COVID-19. The pandemic is putting too much pressure on people's psyche, drastically changing lives, claiming lives of loved ones and the people we know, and leaving a trail of growing social stigma and discrimination. Against this backdrop, a psychosocial support organization known as Regional Psychosocial Support Initiative, REPSI, urged SADC leaders during the recently held summit to invest more in mental health. George Alfandika is the country representative to REPSI. In this interview, he begins by explaining the state of mental illness in the country.
Mental illness in our country is actually no different, I would say, from other countries across the continent. But in view of COVID-19, it has actually exacerbated the situation. The situation has gone up because of the containment measures due to the restrictions, and for people not getting together, or even children and the youth not going to school at times when the lockdown situation actually calls for schools to close. That actually has also increased the concern on the children and the youth in terms of getting together and getting assurance from their peers in terms of getting along with life. We have seen issues of increased pregnancies, and so that even by the time schools after closure, when they reopen, many girls have not been able to return to school. They have fallen pregnant, which in most occasions has actually happened within the home state. So this is actually increased the situation on the girl child. So it affects women and children generally, mostly because issues of gender-based violence also, the women, they take care of people who are sick, and they take on the caring roles more often. So that also impacts on their mental health. That is not to say that men are not affected per se. They are also affected. COVID-19 and even other issues in general can also take their toll on men. So much so that they can also have issues to do with maybe being anxious and being concerned about what to bring to the table tomorrow or the next day. So in terms of earning, men could be said to be also affected because sometimes maybe their job security may not be guaranteed.
Other than pregnancies and anxiety, in what form does this mental illness manifest itself? Are we talking about increasing cases of suicide, increasing cases of depression? In what form are these illnesses manifesting themselves?
One of the forms in which the mental illnesses are manifesting themselves is through, for instance, maybe suicidal ideation and also social distancing, which I think for me I would talk more about the physical distancing. And whilst the social people are still connected via WhatsApp, for instance, other social media, Facebook and things like that, but still there's an impact in terms of people not getting together. And if we talk about children and youth, for instance, who generally would be of school-going age, they are also affected because when they get together in school and other fora, that is also a protective measure. They share issues, they discuss, they play together, and that contributes to their mental well-being. But not being able to get together generally also affects the children and youth. And even for adults, that also plays an impact, because when we get together and we share, it is actually very helpful. As we say that a problem shared is half solved.
As communities, what should we do to avoid falling into the problem of mental health? We know communities, a lot of people are falling into depression. You talked about anxiety and all those things. In this COVID era, what should we do as communities, as individuals, to avoid falling into the problem of mental health?
We actually need to provide support to those people who may be affected and even infected with COVID-19, and support them accordingly. But going further, even as a country, we actually need to come together and support those people who are affected or infected with COVID-19, and actually, whilst we are maintaining physical distance to avoid the further infection for spreading the disease, the pandemic, we need to show that we are together with the people by actually giving them support, talking to them, and even making sure that the provisions that they need are provided for.
What message do you have for people that are totally depressed because of the COVID pandemic, for people that are lacking affection and they feel they're no longer wanted and all that? Because basically this disease is more about isolation, and when you get isolated, you start feeling that people are stigmatizing you, kind of. What is it that these people should do? What do you tell them?
Basically, I would say that they need to reach out. When they're in this kind of situation, they should not feel that it's the end of the road, but they should reach out to relations, and also actually not shun going to hospitals. They should need to go for treatment, for support in the public hospitals, even private hospitals or clinics, so that they get the assistance that is required from people who have got the know-how, who are specialized in the medical field, and they can actually give them support. But even beyond that, they should also reach out to relatives and the other people within the community, so that they are socially connected. Because as we are seeing that this illness of COVID-19 also affects people more, maybe even psychologically or mentally, for instance, because of the physical distance that may be there. But they need to reach out and talk to others who can actually support them to actually think through the situation, and to know that tomorrow will still come, and they have to stand steadfast and actually get the support that they need.
George Alufandika, Country Representative for Regional Psychosocial Support Initiative, REPSI. And let's end on a musical note with one of Jaco Jana's pieces. I'm Jane Gogodas. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
As I heard them, as I was waiting for you to come home, my Lord. My heart is hurting, my blood can't understand, makes my heart tears running down on my cheeks. I'm waiting for answers. Yes, I'm waiting for you to come but I know you can't answer me. I'm waiting for my brother, hoping he's gonna come, but I hear he's coming, but in a coffin.